You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and we are talking everything about sex today. I feel like it's like that salt and pepper song. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. But actually, we're just talking about you. Like often when we think about sex, we think about, just being with a partner and pleasing them or them pleasing us. And I just want to focus simply on the pleasure of ourselves, because as women, we always are giving to other people and we come last. And I want our pleasure, especially our sexual pleasure, not to be something that's last on our priority list. And so that's why I brought in Jaali of the Jaali Company, who is an amazing sex educator who focuses on sexual pleasure, education, and research, and is just a wealth of information. Little did you know, you can get a lot of sexual things. You don't need to buy $100 sex toy. You can go to the Dollar Tree. And she explains all of that in this episode. So don't miss out on anything. And I'm grateful for her. And I got some major tips as well. So let's get this party started. Hello, Chanel, and welcome to the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. How are you this morning?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Girl, I am so happy to have you because this topic is so important. I just want to dive right into it because we have so much to cover. My first question to you, because I'm a little salty about this, why is it in sex ed we are not taught about pleasure whatsoever?
That's what stresses me out a whole
Exactly.
lot. A whole lot. And I presented at a conference last night, and I was just talking about this, how we can include pleasure in sex ed for all ages and have it age appropriate, basically. Because when we have a foundation where sex is scary or it's going to get you in trouble or all these negative connotations are placed upon it, then that's your foundation for your sexual self, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to forever be like looking over your shoulder, per se, around how you think about sex, how you behave towards sex and all of that. So that's why in my company, I specifically talk about pleasure-based, inclusive, medically accurate sex education, because I think that pleasure-based part is super important.
And I do agree with it. It's important because I feel like, how did I learn about sex? It sure wasn't in sex ed. Sex ed was just like, okay, but my parents had this book called The Joy of Sex that they had in their bookshelf, and I was a curious child. I was done with the encyclopedias. I was like, what's this? I was like, okay.
I have that on my shelf over there.
And I was like, and I read that at a pretty young age, even though I didn't have an exact clue what I was reading. But I will also say that even kind of reading that and whatever, I still didn't understand, like my first consent sexual experience was like me just lying there and like, okay, great, he's done it. And is this supposed to be it and whatever? And it wasn't until I started learning how to touch myself that I started to explore more and feeling more pleasure. Like, so how do women allow themselves to experience sexual pleasure? Because like, I feel like there's that, and let me even backtrack it even further. What are barriers to our sexual freedom?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? So I think one, there's this historical piece that I just can't let go of.
Yeah.
And there's this like trickle down effect that I speak about in my research. And so I tell people to give their mamas, aunties, whoever raised you, give them a break, because they didn't give you information. It might be because they weren't given the information either. And so there's this, we can only teach what we know, basically. And then unless we're intentional about changing that narrative or doing something different, then it's just going to be, well, these are my experiences. Or what I heard most often is, people just were told, don't bring home no babies. Okay, how do I do
Exactly.
that? Like, how are you breaking this down for me? So, am I frozen?
You are, but you are frozen. We'll see if this just keeps working. Yeah, I see
There
you.
I am. Okay,
You're
I was
good.
like, ooh. Okay. But yeah, I think that's part of it, is just even the education piece is a barrier because people don't even have that to work off of. And then on top of that, for women specifically, there are quote unquote certain ways we're supposed to behave, right? So
Right.
the whole like just lying there for your first experience happens a lot because one, we're taught that, and I'm speaking in heteronormatively, if you're with a man, they're supposed to take over and they should know what to do. And you just are there existing? Question mark? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So I think that's a barrier. And then there's a lot of shame around feeling sexual in general. And so no matter who you want to feel sexual with, there's still all of the shame around it. And so, I mean, there's a lot of levels and layers and barriers to that. And I hope that people in general can become more empowered to know what they like themselves. Because earlier this week, I was talking to some college women, and I was like, listen to me real good. I said, I'm gonna have an auntie moment with you. And I said, do not place your pleasure in someone else's hands.
I
And I was
know
like, I
that's
know
right.
y'all are like 21 or 20 or however old you are, but let me tell you something. I lived a little bit longer, just a little bit. And I'm going to tell you, do not place your pleasure in someone else's hands. You need to know what you like. Now, is there space for exploration with someone else? Absolutely. I'm talking about when we are in sexual spaces or scenarios where we just existing and you're just there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's super important to be empowered to know what you like yourself so you can tell somebody else.
So how does someone get over that shame to begin the exploration to know what you like?
I think it's about meeting yourself where you're at.
Mm.
I think a lot of times we have this very specific idea of like what sexy is and what it means to be sexually liberated. That can mean different things for different people. And
Yeah.
so, you know what I mean? And so I think that we need to take it on an individual level, meet yourself where you're at. So if you want to just, you know, try something a little different that's out of your norm, there you go. You start there. Don't think that you have to be all the way
In the
over
dungeon.
here. Right. You ain't got to be in the dungeon. You don't have to bust out the leather. You don't have to do anything like that,
Unless you want to.
Oh, right. Unless you want to. I think I'm frozen again. I'm not really sure. Can
You're
you still
okay.
hear me?
I can still hear you clearly.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Hopefully I will unfreeze. But yeah, so I do think that it's important to give yourself grace in this process because I do think more and more people are awakening to the fact that it's okay to be a sexual being. It's okay to be churchy and sexual. It's okay to be, nerdy and sexual. Like it's okay to be human. It's okay to be a sexual person. And that could look 1 zillion different ways. And so
Yeah.
I think it's important to think about that. Like it can look however you want it to be for you because it's your sexuality.
And I agree with that because I think part of me, not part of me, all of me looks at wellness the same way. I look at wellness as, and I would talk about it being a custom pair of jeans. It's, made to fit
Mm.
you. Like what, Becky is doing on Instagram may not be the same thing that means wellness to you or sexual pleasure to you. And I love that you talk about empowering yourself and trying things that may work for you and you don't have to go all the way to the dungeon. I just feel like sometimes if there's that stigmatism that's been so deep rooted that people are like, well, I don't even know where to begin. Like, do I just try touching myself? Do I try, like different, adding different sexual things into my day practice? And I think that's where a lot of women are like, where do I just start? I don't know if there's like even like activities that you could recommend to like just to start.
I think one thing that's been really helpful and something that I am a big proponent of is thinking about pleasure on a broader basis. And what I mean by that is pleasure doesn't always have to be directly sexual. And so I think if we start looking at pleasure in how we can include it or where it already exists in our lives in general, then we can be more grateful and see how we can loop that into our sexual lives specifically. So if people need to know like where to start, I say start with your senses. Whatever senses you have, find something that is pleasurable within that sense. So I always give the example of with taste, I love chocolate peanut butter cup gelato from Talenti.
Okay.
That gives me a lot of pleasure. And it has nothing to do with sex. Now, can I include some gelato in sex? Absolutely. We can figure that out.
I love it. I'm going to talk a bit about that later.
Right. It was like, put a pin in that. But yeah, just to think about like, I'm obsessed with music. So even music is pleasurable in general. And then if I want to feel particularly sexy or sensual, I have playlists for that. You know, I know what artists to play if I'm trying to feel away. You know what I mean? So
yes.
I think yeah. So there is a way to do that that doesn't feel so scary. So that's why I say take small bites, small steps, whatever you need. And pleasure is already there. You just have to realize how it shows up for you and how you can kind of loop that more into your sexual self specifically.
And I think you bring up a good point that a lot of people aren't thinking about is that a lot of us don't know what pleasures us outside of sex. So when you don't know what pleasures you outside of sex, you ain't going to know during sex. And so they're all connected together. And so I think that kind of the ideal of even starting outside of the bedroom is an area that most of us probably do need to think about. On another note, I'm about to ask you what is on this sexy playlist. Because I'm like, a girl needs to know, like, I'm like, I need to know what are her songs. Like I have been making playlists. So I was making tapes back and the slow jam tapes back and I'm totally dating myself. And I used to sell these bad boys and I used to make them pretty good.
Yeah.
So I was like, cause I love my little, baby making music. I don't know. And I'm not even trying to make a baby by any means necessary, but there's something about making these tapes that I love. So I need to know at least 3 songs that are on your playlist.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that because I wasn't even having sex when I was doing this, but people knew that I had like a knack for like putting together playlists and like setting a story. And so in college, this is when we were burning CDs. Now I'm also dating myself. You had to burn the CD and you had to like pull it from whatever illegal source you done pulled it from, and then put it up, right, LimeWire and whatnot.
Yes.
And so, and I would make these burn CDs for people. They're like, I got a date, or I got something going on. I said, okay, how you trying to feel? I mean, it was a whole consultation process. It was so serious. But anyway, now we have streaming, so that has eased that burden. But I cannot go wrong. I am Janet Jackson's #1 fan, hands down. Don't at me, don't debate me. You will not win. So I'm telling you, some good Janet from like either like the Velvet Rope album. I mean, she's got so many, but Would You Mind is a really, really great one. What else do I like? Something more modern. There's this artist called Sir that kept like popping up on my like Spotify playlist. I guess the algorithm figured out
Yeah.
like let's introduce her to this person. I think she's gonna like this person. I'm like, okay, yeah. So Sir, what else do I like? Gosh, there's just so many,
There
Danielle.
are
Like
some. So we're going to make sure we get some from
so
her and we're going to put it
many.
in the comments in the show notes because we need to know what is your
Absolutely.
playlist on your playlist so we can get our sexy on. Because I do feel, again, for me, for someone who likes to move, dancing and
Mm,
music is a great way for me to feel sensual, but also just touching. Like I remember reading somewhere, like even when you're doing like the dishes, add a sensuality to that. It's like how you're like feeling the warmth of the water and how it's, touching your hands and it's finding different ways of doing basic things to add a sensuality to it, but also beginning with what gives you pleasure in general.
mm-hmm.
But that being said, as someone who I was molested as a child, and I know many women who do have, sexual trauma, like how does that play into the feeling of pleasure and how do you move past the sexual trauma to even get to the pleasure aspect of it all?
Yeah, I think I have spoken to a lot of women who have had some sort of trauma um, throughout their lives, whether they were children or as adults. And it's tough. I'm not going to even lie. It's tough because a lot of people, especially if you're younger, you will connect any kind of sexual act or that feeling with what I mean, like
Yeah.
you're automatically connecting those things negatively, and so now you're having to go back and unlearn and rework and redirect that thought process. So as a therapist, I'm always going to suggest that people reach out to somebody professional who can help you unpack that and pull those pieces out. But something that you can do on your own is to one, remind yourself that it is not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
It has not, that is not on you. And I think that's a big hurdle, honestly. It's a big hurdle to realize nothing you said, did, anything is not your fault. So I think that is really, really important. And I think that helps you kind of start to reframe things because you see people in some instances who were abused or had some kind of assault, and now they're starting to change how they show up in the world because they think they did something that caused that to happen. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think it's about reminding yourself, and even if you literally have to put it up on your wall or literally have to have some kind of app reminder that pops up on your phone and reminds you or even affirms you, even let's sometimes I like to use positive language just as a reminder, like you are enough, or you know it's a great day to be a wonderful human being, or whatever you want to say, but
Yeah.
just constant reminders. If you are able to access therapy, because I know it's not accessible for everybody, that is helpful. Um, Locally, I've been involved in some like group therapy. I think that's always healing. If you're able to participate in some kind of group effort, because those people will understand where you're coming from. I think that's another piece of it, is that you feel alone and you feel like nobody else will understand your plight or what you have gone through.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, unfortunately, who do understand. And so I think it's helpful to know that you are not alone as well. So I think just being gentle with yourself is super, super important. If you do not feel sexy that day, do not force it. You know what I mean? But find ways. And this is why I talk about pleasure that is not connected to sex as well, because you still deserve pleasure, even if it's not sexual. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really, really important for me. So you will hear me say this. This is a hill I will die on. That, you know what I mean? Like, you deserve pleasure in all forms the way you want it. So if you want it to be sexual, great. If not, it's still there for you to access.
I love that. So, in my kind of research and getting prepared for this conversation, I came across something I had never heard of. And so I want to see if you know about this because I was just like, what is this? So, I was reading about a sexological bodywork practitioner. Do you know anything about
Mm-hmm.
that? And what's up? Yeah, because I
So
want it. I'm
yeah,
like,
I have some colleagues and friends who are sexological body workers, and it's not my niche, and I haven't studied it, but I've been someone's like practice person and things like that, and I've read some about it. And so there's something called conscious erotic touch
okay.
that I find quite interesting. Um, and that's just one like lane, but it's a way to, it's massage, but it's also like got that extra level of intentionality to it.
It says like a
And
happy ending
there are
massage? Not
I
necessarily.
mean, not necessarily. It's supposed to just, it can be, I will say it
Okay.
can, because there's like yoni massages and lingam massages, but it's supposed to be about being in tune, and it's supposed to about be like breathing and just being really, really in the moment.
Okay.
Now, bodies are bodies, and they're gonna react how they're gonna react. So, you know,
It is what it
that might be
is.
part of it. It is what it is on that. And so that's something that you can talk, with your practitioner to, like, because maybe they offer that service. I don't know. So it could be that. But there's also people who are professional cuddlers. I know a quite
What? A professional
yeah,
cuddler? I'm like, I need one of those for the winter.
exactly. And so I think we miss out on the importance of touch. I think that, in our society, in the United States specifically, it's always go, go, go. I'm doing my own thing. I'm hustling, whoop, 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 whoop. But when do you slow down? When do you get to be vulnerable? Because you always a boss and a hustler and on top. Like, when do you rest? When do you
Yeah.
relax? When does somebody else get to make a decision for you? When do you just get to be a little spoon? Yeah, I think everybody deserves to be a little spoon, right? And so professional cuddlers um, just provide that comfort that people need, and it's literally like, a lot of times it's just not talking. It's literally somebody comforting you. You get to be a little spoon or however you decide to cuddle. And that's it. And so I think there's something powerful. And there's also cuddle parties where people can, be together in a big room or whatever. But yeah, that's a thing. And I think it's something to be looked into.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us are touch deprived and we don't realize it until we realize it. And so it's something to be looked into. So those are two examples of body working and, a different kind of way of thinking about connection.
Yeah, because I hadn't heard of it. And being in San Francisco, I was like, I know that I know that I know that there hella has to be a sexological bodywork person here. Because if there's anyone anywhere
Absolutely.
in the country, it's got to be here. So I was like, I am going to be looking this up. But I never thought about cuddling. But at the same time, if you think about it, we've been in COVID. Most of us have not been touched because I'm like, I don't know you like that. And that for me, dating, especially right now, is like, I don't know you like that. You can say you're
Mm-hmm.
vaccinated, air quote, but are you really vaccinated? Even if you are vaccinated,
Right.
you might have been with Becky who wasn't vaccinated. I don't know why I always use the word Becky as my examples, but Becky is always the person. You could have been with Joanne, which still sounds white, but whatever.
Right.
Um, and she was not vaccinated. So I'm just like, so I And I'm someone who is a hugger. Like my Burning Man name is Hug Her. Hugher, like hug her. So I love to
Yeah.
hug, but I feel like I have been touch deprived and I miss that. I think I miss that more than actually just being penetrated. I mean, like I love sex, don't get it twisted, but I think I miss the touch and I didn't even think about that till you were talking about that. And one of the things I also wanted to bring up is that I feel like one of the blocks I see, like even, and I can just talk about myself when there's no one else here. There's just me. It's me, my bed, my toys. And I feel like one of the blocks I have to pleasure is getting out of my own head. Like, do you have any
Sorry, my
thoughts
dog
on...
is bullying me. I'm so sorry. That's why my hand keeps going up. She keeps nudging my hand. I'm trying not to drop coffee.
I'm
being bullied. I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. But like, so even when there's no one else and you're by yourself, like how does one get out of their head? Like I get like, I'm close. And then I like, man, I got to do this thing for the podcast and my mom needs something or parents need something. And I'm like, and we've missed the moment. I'm like, and I can't. I can like, this is over. Like, how do you get out of your head and fully drop into your body?
Yeah, it's so difficult to do that sometimes. Like, people see me a lot of times as like super peaceful and like, oh, she must meditate and burn incense and do all this stuff. And I'm like, the incense part, yes, but I am the worst meditator ever because my brain is always thinking about 8 different things at a time and it can be really, really difficult to slow down. And so sometimes I think it's about being really, really intentional about what you're going to do. And so for me, sometimes it's about leaving my phone in another room because my phone's always buzzing about something.
Yeah.
Something is happening on my phone all the time. And so like physically leaving it, I feel different because I'm like, it's not right here. Like I'm in my bedroom, it's not in here. Okay. So then what else am I going to do? You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, definitely. That's one distraction out of the way. So I think it takes practice because as someone who has tried like traditional meditation, nah, it ain't gonna work. And so for me, one of my favorite ways to meditate and to be like in the moment is daydreaming.
Yeah.
I love daydreaming. Whether I'm recalling some fun time I had, wink, wink, or making up a whole new scenario, or just thinking about like, I'd rather be at the beach. So I'm just like thinking about my favorite beach and, you know, just really transporting myself there so I can hear the waves, I can feel the sun, you know. I might even fix a drink that is tropical so I can like make it as real as possible. Knowing my behind is in DC and not anywhere near a beach, but I can.
There's not a beach in Potomac, you know, in Anacostia. What are you talking about? I'm joking.
Child, not here. Not here. I like DC, but no.
Yeah, I live there. I feel you.
Yeah. So I think for me is I had to like work really hard at it, honestly. As somebody who teaches about pleasure and all, I have to even work really hard at it because I'm so busy. I work, I'm in school, like, you know, there's a lot going on. So I do have to carve out those moments to just pause, even if it's 5 minutes, you know, or if it's at the end of the night or something. You have to give yourself rest. You have to. Yeah.
No, and I love that. And it made me think of like the reason why I do have certain playlists, like I have playlists from like older relationships. And sometimes I do listen to them because I'm like, oh, you remember that time when you were in the bedroom and blank happened and blank happened. And it was to this exact song. I'm like, and action. And that really does sometimes help. So that's why for music definitely goes back to memories. And I think that also kind of helps. Like even like one of my partners who I was with for off and on for 11 years, like, I
Mm.
feel grateful for that relationship, not because it was a great relationship, but because I think we both allowed ourselves to sexually explore. But like our first song together
Mm.
is Janet Jackson, I Get So Lonely. Or no, it was Anytime, excuse me. And so every time I hear that song,
Mm.
I'm like, I'm transported to his bedroom in his parents'
Mm-hmm.
house. And it's just like on and popping. And it's that memory of
Yes.
this is when I began my sexual exploration. And so I, yeah, I think music's great. I think also being in San Francisco, one of the things I'm also really fortunate about is that we have female oriented sex shops. Like, shout out to Good Vibrations in San Francisco. Like, I remember when I first started exploring and going to a regular sex shop, and I'm like, this seems like there's going to be some guy who walks out in a trench coat. And I'm like, it just felt so nasty and so like unclean. And there was this curtain and whatever. But like when I went into like Good
Mm-hmm.
Vibrations and, female oriented sex shops, it was like beautiful. They were helpful. They were, here's, all the different toys you can touch and you can play and ask questions. And like, I don't feel like everyone has that. Like, so if you don't have that, how do you even begin to like pick a toy, or where do you find those type of places?
So what's funny is that literally yesterday I posted a reel on Instagram. So this month is Kink Awareness Month.
Ooh.
And so I know there's a lot of people who either aren't fully aware of what kink is or don't realize that they already participate in kink in some kind of way already.
Okay.
Because I think we automatically go to the dungeon and the leather and all of that stuff. And so I did a reel about how you can use things from the Dollar Tree, like literally the store, the Dollar Tree, to
Okay.
have like introduction to kink. So I tell people, if you're interested in like new sensations and like learning more and just playing with that, you don't have to come out of your pocket a whole lot. You can run to the Dollar Tree and
Okay.
there are feathers there, there are spatulas there if you want some like impact play. There's things like you don't have to come out of your pocket too much. But the good thing is that there are a lot of resources around sex toys. And I mean, I can name some people off the top of my head who either recommend toys or they have their own shop. And there is a toy, there is an intro for everybody. So don't think you have to get something that spins and jumps and leaps off the wall or anything like that. If
USB
that's where you want to go,
controlled.
right, right. There's
Yeah.
literally something for every level, every interest, and all that stuff. So I think what's interesting is that using toys is just like an extra oomph. It doesn't replace anything. It doesn't, it can be incorporated into. And so, like, you can use it with partners. It doesn't have to be the thing that you use when you aren't partnered, or, if you weren't satisfied with the session, then you finish with your own toys or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think there's something for everybody. Um, that is at your level, whatever that is, and then you can build upon that, or you can try it and hate it, but at least you've tried it. And so I tell people, just try it and just kind of figure out what you might like and things like that. But you don't know unless you try.
I'm like, says to myself, must go to the Dollar Tree to see what is actually at the Dollar Tree. I'm like, good to
Yes.
know. While I'm picking up my little white candles, I'm like, let's see what else. I did think about when you were talking about it, I was like, a spatula was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, what else could be at a Dollar Tree? I'm like, must look into this. So I love it. I love it. I love it. I think you gave
Yeah.
so much good information on so many different ways about how to, just kind of start exploring, and that pleasure isn't just about sex, and, just to be free. And I love you for this. How can people connect with
Yeah.
you? Like, I know you're doing a lot of great things out there.
Absolutely. I'm on social media. You can find me at Jaali Co. It's JAALI_CO. And that is on Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook, I'm there at Jaali Co. I'm on TikTok sometimes, and you can find me there at Chanel Jaali. But also, you can, of course, find me at my website, www.jaalico.com.
Fantabulous. So I love to ask everyone some quick fire questions at the end of the show. So nothing major. So
Sure.
just whatever comes to mind, answer the first thing that comes to mind. So my first question to you is, what does living hella well mean to you?
I feel like it's prioritizing your health.
Yeah.
And I think it's about prioritizing all parts of your health. Of course, I'm back on my hill. Hella well also means being joyful and having pleasure and kind of having a holistic perspective. And I think that's kind of what pops up to me is like, yes, hella well all over.
Love it. And my next question to you is, aisle or window?
Window.
What's always in your travel bag?
Headphones, so I can listen to music. Headphones. I have to have some kind of something happening, whether it's a podcast or it's usually music. But definitely headphones, and a travel candle. I like to travel with candles.
Love that. And when's the first time you knew that you were a person of color?
Ooh, I was probably about 3 or 4. And everyone got invited to, her name was Kim. I still remember her name, Kim. Everybody got invited to Kim's birthday party except for me. And I spoke very well and could advocate for myself. And I told my parents as soon as I got home because I just didn't understand. And my parents went right up to the school. They were going up to the school parents if they needed to be. And it turns out the mom told Kim to invite everybody except for me because I was the black girl. I was the only black kid in the class, in that particular class. So that is something that I'm sure my parents were not ready to talk about because I was literally 3 or 4. But that is the first time I knew.
Wow. Kim and her mom.
Kim, I know. I wonder what Kim doing.
Yeah, I was like, Kim. Hope you turned out to be better than your mom.
I hope so.
Yes. And my last question to you is, part of this podcast is creating a wellness revolution for women of color to stop living in survival mode and actually thriving and putting themselves first. What advice would you give to your younger self to be a part of this movement?
That you are enough. And it's okay to constantly be learning about yourself. I think that would be a big, big one. You're enough where you are today.
Bet. I love it. Thank you so much for being on here, giving us information. We will definitely be getting that playlist information from you. So don't think you're getting out of these songs. You're going to hook us up with bringing our sexy back and making sure that we're adding not just sexual pleasure, but pleasure into our lives because we are all so worthy of it. Thank you all for another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. And I'll see you guys next week. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hella Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellawellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hella Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hella Well Danny on Twitter. And if you hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.